Right, I've got the centre stand spring on this machine now, and I drilled and tapped a hole to an M6 size where the little mushroom headed knob would have stuck out originally to get hook the spring on, which had been rather cleverly ground off. So I was able to fit a centre stand spring and make it work. But I had quite a struggle the other day doing a similar job on the Trident actually, and I took the stand off that one. I had to change the pivot bolts anyway, but it still took quite a bit of wrestling and swearing, even with the spring hooked on at both ends first and then trying to pull the centre stand into position so the bolts would go through was quite an ordeal actually. And this spring probably stopped a good inch or so short of where it would hook on, and there was no way that I was strong enough to pull it and sort of hook it over, so I needed to come up with something. And I know about the idea of putting washers between the coils to sort of expand the spring, and I started off trying to do that. I got one end of the spring in the vise and sort of pulled the spring over to open up the coils on one side and get washers in, and then pushed it the other way and tried to get them in the other side, and that went okay for a little while, but it started getting more difficult as I got nearer the halfway mark, and it wasn't going to work. So I had to come up with something else, and I'm hoping to demonstrate and show what I came up with. Now, if you've got access to a lathe or a friend with a lathe, you should be able to do what I'm going to try and demonstrate here. I've got one end of this spring hooked onto one of the tool clamping bolts of the tool post, and I've got a sort of T-handled effort clamped in the chuck of the lathe. And what I can do, obviously by moving this, I can stretch the spring, and I can stretch it to a point where I can lock it like that, and then if I need to fine adjust it, I can do that here. Basically open up the coils until I can hopefully demonstrate I can put a washer in there. Basically, let's see, this is quite a thick washer. There we are, got that in. Now all the coils are opened by pretty much equal amounts, and all you got to do really, I haven't got two washers the same thickness here at the moment, but basically I've got that one in there, so next I would want one there, and then there. Do them all alternately all the way along, and when you've got your washers in every other coil on this side and the corresponding other coils on that side, if you like, that'll hold your spring stretched, and then you'll be able to put it onto whatever it is you want to fit it onto, and then it's not so difficult. You might need to use pliers, but once it's in position you'll be able to pull the washers out with pliers, and then your spring settles down and hopefully will do the job that you want it to do. And I'll just let this go now, and you can see that one washer is caught pretty firmly in there, and look at the gap between the coils, and that takes a little bit of time and a good handful of washers, but in the end you end up with a spring that will be easy to fit, and like I say, you can just then pull the washers out with the pliers, and you'll hopefully end up with the result that I did on this Triumph. And I did it all for the first time ever, I think. I fitted a centre stand spring without any swearing or stress, and it didn't really take too long to actually fit it. The most time consuming part, I suppose, was stretching it in the lathe and putting all the washers in, but even the time that took was a lot less than probably what would have been pretty futile time, and much more of it wasted trying to do it any other way. So that's one that some people might like to keep in mind. Like I say, you need access to a lathe or something very similar to it, or you need to know somebody who'll let you borrow one for 5 minutes while you do that in their lathe. But that's what I'm going to try and remember. I'm very happy with that, and I'm also very happy that the M6, the nice shiny stainless M6 bolt that was holding the distributor clamp in place onto the engine, that's now being replaced with the correct quarter BSF one, has found a new life. It can be nice and shiny and visible, and it's screwed into an M6 thread that I drilled and tapped myself, and it's got a very useful future ahead of it, supporting the centre stand spring, so the centre stand spring can be operative once again.